When we Americans are asked where did cowboys start from, the first place that comes to mind is Texas. But that's over 1,000 kilometers from the place cowboys actually started. To find the true origin of the American cowboy, we have to look past the dusty plains of the West and travel back to before the 16th century. In 1521, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de León set sail on his second expedition to the North American mainland. He brought with him 200 settlers, agricultural tools, horses, and a small herd of Andalusian cattle. These were the very first cattle to set foot on what is now the United States of America. But the colonization attempt failed. The local Calusa warriors then fought with all their might to defend their homeland, driving the Spanish back to their ships. Ponce de León was mortally wounded, and the expedition fled back to Cuba. In the chaos of the retreat, some of the Andalusian livestock they brought were left behind in the subtropical wilderness of Florida. Left to fend for themselves, these cattle did not perish. Instead, they adapted. They developed resistance to parasites, thrived in high humidity, and grew into a hardy, unique breed, today known as Florida Cracker. As the Spanish established later settlements like St. Augustine in 1565, more cattle herds were imported. Soon, the local indigenous population's ancestors of today's Seminole Tribe began interacting with these free-roaming herds. They learned to navigate the swampy terrain, capture the wild livestock, and integrate cattle herding directly into their society and food systems. Long before English-speaking colonists arrived on the eastern seaboard, America's first working cattle handlers were already on horseback in the Floridian interior. By the mid-1700s, this pastoral lifestyle had evolved into a massive, organized ranching economy. An Oconee Creek leader named Ahia settled his people in the fertile region of Payne's Prairie. The British, recognizing his incredible wealth and influence, gave him a fitting name, Cowkeeper. Historical accounts, including those of naturalist William Bartram, document that Cowkeeper and his people managed thousands of head of cattle. They did not use fences. Instead, they utilized highly trained cow dogs and traditional sophisticated herding techniques to manage their stock across the wild, open ranges of Florida. The region was a thriving hub of beef production, run entirely by native ranchers, decades before the United States of America was even founded in 1776. To put this into perspective, think about the timeline. The legendary Texas cattle drives on the Chisholm Trail didn't begin until 1866. That is a 345-year gap. By the time Texas cowboys began driving their herds north, Florida's native cattle herding tradition was already older than the United States of America itself. So, why does everyone think cowboys started in Texas? To understand why the Florida origin story is so often overlooked, we have to look at what actually happened in Texas. The legendary Texas cattle drive era was not a fabrication. Following the American Civil War, from the late 1860s through the 1880s, Texas ranching experienced an unprecedented boom. Trail bosses moved millions of Texas Longhorns north along the Chisholm Trail and the Great Western Trail to railheads in Kansas. This was indeed a defining chapter in the development of the American economy. It was simply not the first chapter. How then did Texas monopolize the identity of the American cowboy? The answer lies in timing, media, and technology. The Texas cattle boom coincided with the rapid expansion of railroads and the rise of mass media. The sheer scale of the Western cattle drives made them major national news. As the 19th century drew to a close, publishers seized on this fascination. Cheap dime novels began circulating by the millions, depicting the Texas cowboy as a rugged, heroic figure of the untamed frontier. Decades later, Hollywood took these romanticized stories and turned them into a global phenomenon. From the 1930s to the 1960s, Western movies and television shows dominated the entertainment industry. They exported a specific image of the cowboy white, Stetson-wearing, and Texas-based to audiences worldwide. Meanwhile, Florida's ranching tradition remained isolated. The state was heavily forested, swampy, and geographically away from the main western migration routes. Florida's cattle herding stayed highly localized, quiet, and largely undocumented in the popular media of the time. There is also a more challenging aspect to this history. The omission of Florida's first cowboys was not entirely accidental. During the 19th century, the U.S. government waged 3 brutal wars against the Seminole people. These conflicts were fought over territory, sovereignty, and, most notably, the valuable cattle herds owned by the tribe. The Seminoles resisted fiercely, retreating deep into the Everglades, and became one of the only tribes never to sign a formal peace treaty with the United States. Because they were officially viewed as adversaries of the state for decades, their achievements in ranching and agriculture were not celebrated in American textbooks. Their history was not just underrepresented, it was actively ignored during the era when the mythology of the American West was being constructed. Are there still Native American cattle ranchers today? Following the devastation of the Seminole Wars and progressive land loss in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Seminole people faced severe economic hardships. Their massive historic herds were nearly gone. The turning point for the modern era began in 1936. As part of a federal program, the U.S. government shipped starter herds of cattle to the newly established Brighton Reservation. However, these animals were often weak and drought-ridden, salvaged from the Western Dust Bowl. Despite the poor quality of the initial livestock, Seminole handlers utilized their ancestral knowledge to nurse the animals back to health. By 1939, tribal cattle trustees were established to organize the program, and in 1941, they built the Red Barn, which became the physical and cultural hub of the tribe's modern ranching operations. When the Seminole Tribe of Florida achieved formal federal recognition in 1957, its cattle industry was already well on its way to recovery. Today, the Seminole Tribe of Florida runs one of the most successful and robust cattle operations in the entire country. Its cattle co-op consists of approximately 67 families managing livestock across 110,000 acres of pasture. Together, they maintain more than 12,000 head of cattle, making the Seminole Tribe the 4th largest cattle producer in the state of Florida and the 12th largest in the United States. A unique aspect of this operation is its leadership. Because the Seminole Tribe is traditionally structured around matrilineal clans, women have historically held significant authority, including livestock ownership. Pioneering cattlewomen like Ada Tiger in the 1920s managed some of the largest herds in the state. That legacy continues today, with women making up over half of the tribe's independent cattle owners, representing a tradition of female leadership that predates similar developments in the wider American ranching industry. This modern operation is not a historical reenactment. It is a highly sophisticated, multi-million-dollar business. Today's Seminole ranchers utilize electronic identification tracking, advanced veterinary pharmaceuticals, and progressive land management practices to protect Florida's natural wetlands and wildlife corridors. They have successfully combined 5 centuries of herding tradition with 21st century agricultural science. The first American cowboys are not a relic of historical text. They are active, modern industry leaders managing some of the most productive rangelands on the continent.